I'm 62 years old. For the last 48 hours, I've been staring at a ceiling tile with a water stain that looks vaguely like a skull. The room smells like industrial lavender and the kind of smell that's designed to convince you that you're safe while you're actually being dishoned. I'm lying in a bed with high metal rails, the kind they use for people who can't be trusted not to wander off in memories. My son David and my daughter Chloe are standing at the. They are wearing their grieving faces, the tilted heads, the forced frowns, the soft voices they've been practicing. The lawyer mentioned my 8-figure life insurance policy. It's for the best, Dad. Chloe. Her voice is thin as the hospital sheets. The house was becoming too much for you. Incidents were getting dangerous. The incidents. That was their word for the times I forgot. For the time I lost my car in the driveway. 1. They didn't know I saw David sneaking into the kitchen at 2 a.m. to turn the gas on while I was asleep. They didn't know I found the small blue pills Chloe was crushing into my morning tea, make my speech slur and my head swim. I tried to speak, but my tongue felt like a piece of dry leather in my mouth. The sedative they'd given me in the ambulance was still heavy, and my blood. 1. He's drifting off again, David whispers to a man in a white coat. Dr. Eris. A man whose smile never quite reaches his. Make sure he stays comfortable. We don't want him agitated. Agitated was code for conscious. They leaned down to kiss my forehead, a gesture so cold it made my skin. 1. As they turned to leave, I felt David's hand linger. He wasn't checking my pulse. He was looking at my wedding ring, a heavy gold band I hadn't taken off the day I married their mother 35 years ago. We should probably take the ring for safekeeping, Chloe, David muttered. No, Chloe snapped back. A flash. You'll get combative if you pull it off now. The facility rules say we can take personal effects after final transition. They were already talking about my death like they walked out, the heavy door clicking shut with a finality that would have broken a weaker man-teat. 1. They thought they had erased me. They thought I was just a body in a bed, waiting for a heart attack they were trying to trigger with their comfort medications. But as the room went silent, I felt the slight vibration against the ring was warm. They thought it was just a piece of jewelry, a sentimental relic of a dead marriage. They forgot that I spent 30 years as a lead military-grade surveillance. 1. They forgot that when their mother died of a sudden illness 2 years ago, an illness that looked remarkably like the one they were trying to give me, I stopped trusting anyone who shared my last name. I looked at the small, pin-sized hole in the side of the gold band. The red light, invisible to the naked eye, was blinking. It had captured everything. The gas leak, the pills, the forged hospice papers, the conversation they just had at the foot of my bed. I closed my eyes, letting my breath go shallow, playing the part of the dying father one last time. 1. You forgot one thing, I thought as the sedative finally pulled me under. You forgot that I never stopped. The first night in the hospice felt like being buried alive in slow motion. Walls were a pale, sick. The only sound was the rhythmic hiss of the oxygen concentrator. Machine I didn't even need, but they had hooked me up to it anyway to make me look fragile. Every 2 hours, a nurse would come in. Most of them were efficient and cold, their eyes staying on the charts rather than my face. They would inject something into my IV line, and within minutes my brain would feel like it was being wrapped in wet cotton. It was the comfort medication David had requested. In reality, it was a chemical muzzle. But around 3 a.m., the door creaked open differently. It wasn't the heavy, tired step of it was someone light. A young woman in blue scrubs stood over me. Her name tag read Maya. She didn't reach for the IV first. She reached for my hand and gently adjusted the blanket. As she did, her eyes fell on my wedding ring. I saw her frown. I noticed the slight, microscopic glimmer of the lens. For a second, my heart hammered against my ribs. If she was with them, if she told David about the ring, I was a dead man. Mr. Vance, she whispered, leaning in close. I know you're awake. I saw the way your pupils reacted when the lights. You aren't as far gone as the charts. I didn't answer. Couldn't. Not yet. I had to know if she was a friend or another shark in the water. My grandmother was in a place like this, her voice barely a breath. They told us she was comfortable too. But I saw the bills, saw the way her estate was handled before she even took her last breath. I know that look in a family's eye. It's not grief, it's account. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small alcohol swab. But instead of cleaning a site for an injection, she wiped the corner of my mouth. I'm not going to give you the full dose tonight, she whispered. I'm going to chart it as administered, but I'm putting it in the waste. Need your head clear if you're going to survive what Friday. That was the day of the final transition. Left as quietly as she had entered. For the first time in weeks, fog in my mind began to. The anger, cold and sharp, started to return. I looked at the ring on my finger. My wife, Sarah, had died in a room just like this. I was so blinded by grief, I didn't questions. I didn't look at the small discrepancies in her bank account. I didn't wonder why David and Chloe were so eager to move on. Lay there, the confused father was dying, and the man who spent his life building surveillance systems was waking up. I knew that the ring was already transmitted. Every word David and Chloe had said in my house, every plan they had made while they was being stored on a secure server they didn't even know existed. They thought they were the ones managing the. They didn't realize I had already mapped out. The ring wasn't just a camera. It was a heart rate monitor linked to a dead man's switch. If my heart stopped under suspicious circumstances, or if I missed a daily check-in pulse that I sent, wrapping the ring in a specific pattern, the entire file would be emailed to the state prosecutor and the insurance. I lifted my hand, my fingers still heavy, but functioning. I tapped the gold band 3 times. Short, long. The check-in was complete. Ghost was still in the machine. Now I just had to wait for David and Chloe to show their hand. I knew they would. They couldn't help themselves. Greed is a loud emotion. It always makes people move too fast. By Wednesday morning, the air in the room felt heavy, like it was saturated with the secrets being kept just outside my door. Maya was true to her word. My head was clear. The sharp edges of my thoughts reached. I spent the hours playing my part, keeping my eyes half closed, my breathing shallow whenever the other nurses walked in. Saga of Hearts, you learn that people only see what they expect to see. They expected a dying man, so that is all they saw. Around noon, I heard the familiar click of polished dress shoes on the linoleum. David. He didn't come alone. I heard Chloe's sharp, hurried footsteps beside him. Lower, gravelly voice of a man I didn't recognize. Is he out? The stranger asked. He's been under since we got him here, David replied, his voice devoid of the fake warmth he used when the doses are high enough that he wouldn't wake up if a bomb went off. I felt them gather around the bed. The stranger was a man named Miller, a name I recognized from the insurance company's high-level executive list. Policy is for $12 million, Miller said, voice cold and transactional. But the accidental death rider doubles it to 24 if it happens within the ability during a medical procedure. If he just fades away from natural causes, my board might flag the payout for a second. We know, Chloe snapped. That's why we're here. Dr. Eris said the procedure to clear his lungs is scheduled. Simple complication, a spike in the sedative, and it's over. Clean. Professional. And my cut? Miller asked. $2 million, as agreed, David said. Once the wire clears, we just need you to ensure the internal investigators without a physical autopsy. $24 million. That was the price they had put on waiting for me to die. They were selling my last breath. Coldness settled over me that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. It was a clarity so absolute it felt like ice in my veins. I realized then that my wife's death hadn't been an accident either. We had a smaller policy, but enough to fund David's failing real estate ventures and Chloe's gambling debts. They had practiced on her. And now they were perfecting the craft on me. He looked so small, Chloe whispered. For a second, I thought I heard a hint of regret. But then she added, He's been a burden ever since Mom left. Burden with a very large bank account, David joked. They laughed. A quiet, muffled sound that felt like a slap across my face. They walked toward the door. Miller stopped. What about the ring? You said it was worth 50 grand on its own. Friday, David said. I don't want to leave any marks on his hands while still technically alive. It looks bad if the paramedics notice bruising. They left, and the silence that followed was deafening. I looked at the ring on my finger. The red light was steady. It heard every word. Death Rider, the $2 million bribe, the scheduled complication on Friday. They thought they were the ones managing a logistic. They forgot that I was the one who designed the tracking systems for their very lives. I reached up and tapped the ring. This time, I didn't just send a check-in. I initiated the upload phase 2. Somewhere, miles away, a secure server was receiving the audio file of 3 people conspiring to commit murder and insurance fraud. The file was being time-stamped, locked away in a digital vault that would open the moment I gave this. I wasn't just a victim in a bed anymore. They were walking right into the center of it. I looked toward the door, waiting for Maya. I needed one more piece of the puzzle. I needed to know exactly what Dr. Eris was planning. Because in this story, the confused old man wasn't going to be the one who stopped. Thursday night felt different. The air in the facility was thin, as if the oxygen itself knew that tomorrow was the day everything was supposed to. I lay perfectly still, my mind racing through every line of code I had ever written, every logic gate I had ever constructed. In engineering, there is always a failsafe. Always. Maya arrived at 2:15. She didn't turn on the lights. I used a small pen light to check my IV. I could see the tension in the set of her shoulder. She looked exhausted, her eyes darting toward the door every few seconds. "Mr. Vance," she whispered, her voice tight. They moved the procedure up. "Dr. Eris is coming in at Sam instead of 9 no. He brought his own specialist to handle the sedation. They're bypassing the standard nursing." I slowly opened my eyes and looked at her. For the first time since I arrived, I let the confused mask fall completely away. My voice was a gravelly rasp from disuse, but it was firm. "Maya," I said. "Look at my ring." She blinked, startled by the clarity in my voice. Leaned in, her eyes focusing on the tiny lens. "It's been recording everything," I whispered. "Conversations at the foot of my bed. The bribe. The plan for Friday. It's all on a secure server." She gasped, her hand flying. You heard them?" "I heard everything," I said. "But I need your help to close the loop. If I die tomorrow, the files go to the police. But it will be too late for me. I need to survive the complication to make sure they can never do this to another person." Maya looked at the IV bag hanging above me. "Dr. Eris is going to use a heavy dose of a paralytic mixed with a fast-acting sedative. It's designed to stop your breathing so gradually that it looks like a natural respiratory. Even an autopsy would struggle to find it if they didn't know what to look for." "Is there an antagonist? Something to neutralize it?" She nodded slowly. "Neostigmine. But I can't just switch the meds. Eris will be watching the monitors. If your heart rate doesn't drop as expected, he'll know something is wrong." I looked at the ring. "The ring is linked to a heart rate simulator I designed for. If I can get my phone or a tablet near it, spoof the signal to the room's monitor, it will show whatever heart rate I want it to show." Maya's eyes widened. "Monitors here are Bluetooth, enabled for the nursing stations. If you can tap into the local network I already have." The moment I got here, the ring's transmitter started mapping the facility's Wi-Fi. Just need a device with enough processing power to run the override. Maya didn't hesitate. Pulled a tablet from her medical cart. "This is logged into the hospital's. Use it? Keep the cart near the bed," I told her. "And don't look surprised when the alarm sounds. We need Eris to think the plan is working perfectly until the very moment the doors lock." For the next 2 hours, while the rest of the hospice slept, we worked in the dark. My fingers, once so fast on a keyboard, clumsy and stiff, but the muscle memory was still there. I bypassed the facility's firewall, located the monitor for room 402, and slaved the output to a virtual signal controlled by my ring. By 5 a.m., Dr. Eris's screen, I would appear to be slipping away, a steady, heartbreaking decline into cardiac arrest. In reality, my heart would be beating with the fury of a man who had finally found his way back from the edge. "Maya," I said as the first gray light of dawn touched the window. "If this goes wrong, take the ring. Smash the glass on the side. There's a micro SD card inside. Give it to the man named Harold Bain. He's my lawyer." Squeezed my hand. "It won't go wrong, Arthur." I closed my eyes as I heard the heavy doors at the end of the hallway open. The specialists had arrived. David and Chloe wouldn't be far behind. They wanted to be there for the final transition. They wanted to make sure the money was safe. They forgot that the most dangerous thing in the world had already been erased. Because once you've lost everything, you have absolutely nothing left to fear. The room filled with the clinical, heavy presence of people who had come to witness an ending. Dr. Eris entered first, followed by a man carrying a specialized black kit. Behind them, David and Chloe hovered in the doorway. They were dressed in dark colors, already wearing the aesthetic of mourning, though their eyes were sharp with the electricity of anticipation. "Is the patient ready?" Dr. Eris asked Maya, voice a practiced, oily calm. Maya didn't look at me. She kept her eyes on the tablet she had hidden behind her medical cart. "Vitals are stable, doctor. He's been unresponsive since the midnight round." "Good," Eris said. He turned to the specialist. "We'll begin the respiratory clearance now. Prepare the sedative." I lay perfectly still. My eyes were closed, but my ears were tuned to every sound. The click of a glass vial being snapped open, the hiss of a needle drawing liquid, the rustle of gloves. I felt the specialist's hand on my eye. Sensing sedation, the specialist muttered. As the cold liquid entered my vein, I knew Maya had already swapped saline solution, and the actual sedative was being diverted. But I had to time the heart rate override perfectly. If my pulse stayed at a healthy 70 beats per minute while they were supposedly drugging me into a coma, the game would be up. I tapped the gold band of my ring against the bed rail. 3 quick pulses. On the monitor above my head, the green line began to change. "Heart rate is dropping," Eris noted, leaning closer to the screen. 80, 72. "He's reacting quickly," David whispered from the corner. He sounded relieved. "It's finally happening. Patience," Chloe hissed. "Just let them." I watched the movie of my own death play. I heard the monitor's beep grow slower, more sluggish. Beep, beep, beep. Every sound was a hammer blow against the silence of 48, Eris announced. "Respiratory rate is shallow. Specialist, increase the paralytic. Let's bring this to a close." This was the moment. On the monitor, I initiated the flatline protocol. The steady beeping turned into a long, haunting, continuous tone. Time of death, 6:14 a.m. Sounded almost bored. Chloe let out a staged, stifled sob. David stepped forward, his hand reaching for mine. I felt his fingers wrap around my leg. He wasn't holding it to say goodbye. He was pulling at the wedding ring. "It's stuck," David muttered, his voice frustrated. His finger is swollen. "Just leave it for a second, David," Chloe whispered urgently. "The nurse is still in the room." "I want it now," David snapped. He gave the ring a hard, violent. That was when I opened my eyes. I didn't just open them. I sat up in the bed with the strength. I grabbed David's wrist with a grip that made his bones creak. "You always were too impatient, David." My voice wasn't a rasp anymore. It was a roar. David screamed, stumbling back against the medical cart. Chloe shrieked, her grief mask shattering into a look of pure, unadulterated terror. Dr. Eris froze, his face turning a shade of white that matched his coat. "What is this?" Aris stamped. "The monitor." The heart stopped. "The monitor showed you exactly what I wanted you to see." Swinging my legs over the side of the bed, I stood up, tall and steady, looking every bit the man who had built an empire from nothing. "Just like this ring heard exactly what you wanted to do to me." I looked at the doorway. Maya was already there, but she wasn't alone. 2 men in suits stepped into the room. A lawyer, Harold Bain, and a man with a badge from the State Bureau of Investigation. Dr. David Vance, Chloe Vance, the investigator said, his voice cutting through the chaos. "You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder and attempted insurance fraud." This Chloe yelled, her voice reaching a frantic pitch. "He's crazy. He's having a hallucination. Look at his records." "We've looked at the records, Chloe," Harold Bain said, holding up a leather portfolio. "The real ones, not the ones you forged. We've also had the pleasure of listening to the live audio feed from your father's wedding ring for the last 72 hours. The accidental death rider was a nice touch. It'll add at least 10 years to your sentence." I stood there, watching the police move in. I watched them zip-tie David's hands, the same hands that had tried to steal the ring off my body before I was even cold. I watched them lead Chloe out, her heels clicking frantically on the linoleum she thought would. Looked at Dr. Eris, who was slumped against the wall, his career and his life over in a single morning. The room was finally quiet. The flatline tone had been turned. Maya walked over to me and handed me a glass. But you did it, Arthur. No, I said, looking at the gold band on. We did it. But as I looked out the window at the right, I knew there was one more thing I had to do. The story wasn't over until the roots of this betrayal were completely pulled from the earth. The house felt different when I walked back through the front door. It didn't smell like lavender or antiseptic anymore. It smelled like wood, old books, and the quiet of a place that no longer. I walked into the living room and sat in my chair, not as a victim and not as a burden, but as the owner of every brick and board. The aftermath was a whirlwind of legal filings and news reports. David and Chloe didn't just face charges for the conspiracy in the hospice. Once the police went through the digital files from my ring, backup servers I had hidden, the scope of their greed was laid bare. They had been systematically draining my wife's small estate for years, and they had even attempted to sell off pieces of the family business to offshore shell companies. They were sentenced in late autumn. I didn't go to the sentencing. I didn't need to see them in orange jumpsuits to feel whole. I just wanted the truth to be the final word. A week after the trial, Maya came to visit. She wasn't in her scrubs this time. She looked younger, lighter. She brought a small bouquet of flowers and sat on the porch with me. What will you do now, Arthur? She looking out over the garden. I'm going to do what I should have done the moment my wife died, looking at the wedding ring on my finger. I'm going to use the resources I have to make sure the state facilities they wanted to put me in are starting a foundation. We're going to provide the kind of oversight that ensures no family can ever try to erase a person again. I'd like to help with that. I was hoping you'd say that, I replied. After she left, I walked into my office. I pulled out the blue ledger and the micro SD card from the ring. I placed them into a safe in the wall, not to hide them, but to archive them. They were the evidence of a war I had won, but they were also a reminder of the price of that victory. I looked at a photo of my wife Sarah on the desk. We got them, Sarah, I whispered. They forgot that we built this together. Can't erase a foundation that's made of the truth. I walked back to the living room and turned off the lights. I didn't need a guardian angel or a hidden camera anymore. For the first time in 2 years, I wasn't watching the shadows. I was just a man, in his own, going to sleep in a bed that belonged to him. The only thing I had to remember was that I was finally free. Sometime after the sentencing, David and Chloe began to feel a deep, haunting regret for their actions. They finally realized that they hadn't just lost fortune. They had lost everything. Their father's protective shadow. One day, Arthur came to the prison to visit them. The moment they saw him, tears began to flow uncontrollably. In voices heavy with sorrow, they confessed to their crimes and begged for his forgiveness. Arthur, who had always been a man of a gentle heart, felt his resolve melt away, broken children. He realized then that while revenge offers justice, only forgiveness offers true peace for the soul. Arthur offered them words of comfort and promised to give them one final chance to redeem them. True to his word, he spoke with his legal team to help reduce, eventually brought them back home. Today, that grand white house, once again filled with the sounds of laughter and genuine love. Arthur is no longer alone. Children now devote themselves to his care. Together, they have decided to run the foundation that protects and honors the elderly. They have finally understood that the value of family bonds is worth far more than any insurance payout